Are you telling? I hit go. Are we starting?
Okay, wait.
You'll edit this part out. Okay, here we go. Okay. Woohoo, here we are. Welcome. I'm Marnie Batista. I am the creator of Screw the Should Life on Substack and Life Check Yourself. And today I am so excited because I have Rebecca Olson with us. She's an executive life coach, speaker, host of the Ambitious and Balanced Working Moms podcast. So if you're a working mom, whether you have littles or not, we're still working moms. In fact, I was late for a call today because my 27-year-old needed to vent. And then at the end, you'll appreciate this, Rebecca. I said, I have to go. And she said, I just vented and you're not even going to respond. So being a busy working mom is not just for when you have littles. So what she does is she helps high achieving working moms create sustainable work life balance. Amen. Without sacrificing their career ambitions or their family presence. Her approach blends practical strategy with mindset mastery, empowering women to redefine success and lead with confidence at work and at home. I'm so happy that you are here.
Thank you for having me, Marnie. So delighted.
So, okay, I was just did a post on Substack about uh overwhelm and the inability to make decisions because I read this stat that said that the average woman today is holding so much cognitive and mental load, like up to 4 or more roles that they're currently carrying at the same time. Um that they can't make decisions, they can't function. So when you're working with women, like there's that reason. What's the underneath reason? What's the real reason that working moms are feeling just so exhausted?
I mean, even when you say that 4 or more roles, that you immediately, I could feel the overwhelm flood my body, right?
Right?
Just like thinking about it, right? And all of a sudden, I just went to everything I do for my kids and everything I have running my business and my marriage and my parents, and I just went to
Those
all
are
these
it.
places instantaneously in my mind of all of the various roles that I that I carry, and that's, I think, what that is the source of a lot of overwhelm. Literally, our brain thinks about that, and then we think, I can't handle it all, or I can't do it all, or I can't do it well, and then we flood our body with an emotion, which is generally speaking overwhelm or exhaustion or anxiety or whatever it is, right? So I there's no question that circumstances in life dictate some of our emotional stability and all of the things. I don't want to discount that. And yet, so much of our overwhelm is found in our mind. And it's coming through
Hmm.
the way that we are thinking and the expectations, invisible, really, expectations we are placing on ourselves to perform at a certain level or be a certain way or achieve, success in a certain way. And those are things that we ultimately have control over.
Yeah, I was doing this workshop, and so I had people talk about all the different roles and habits that they have that in their life, like right now,
Mm,
and not just even like functional roles, but like the people pleaser, the caretaker, the problem solver, the one who has
mm,
it all together.
mhm.
And what I said, and I'd love for you to kind of speak into this, is I was like, how many of you actively, consciously chose these roles?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and the overwhelming sense was like these are put on me by others, but only after I consciously or unconsciously agree to that role. So where do we start to like unpack these things in a way that translates to like feeling, like you said, more balanced, more empowered, more in control?
Uh, I absolutely. I think that we live in this world of kind of unconscious expectation living on so many levels, and it really isn't until we bring these things to consciousness that we can do anything about it, right? If it stays in the back of our awareness or our subconscious, we're just we are living blindly, right? And we're living a life that
Mm,
we may or may not want to be living. Ultimately, that's where regret starts to creep in, that's where resentment creeps in, and burnout happens, all of the things happen. And so the awareness process is such an important starting point in any of this. We can't begin to solve for overwhelm and how you're committed in your life and what your schedule looks like, which of course there's a piece of that in there, what roles you have. We can't begin to solve that until we step back for a moment and we say, well, let's look at the whole picture for a moment and start to think about what are, in your case, in the way you're describing it, all these various roles that you play, but the expectations I have behind these roles. And so, like, a starting place that a question I usually like to ask is, a couple of them that I think are absolutely essential in here is, one is, what does balance actually mean to you? Because on some level, that's what we're talking about. And balance is such a subjective word, really. You
yeah.
get to decide what balance means to you, and I get to decide what balance means to me, and it's probably going to look slightly different. So what if you were living a life where all of these things were going well for you and you felt like you were showing up in the way that you wanted to? What does that even look like? What's the vision behind that? Because if your brain doesn't know, you can't create that, right? And
I
so
would love that. So we have some people who are on live. If you guys want to put in a comment, I would love to know how we're all defining balance right now, because I think for some people it's like, exercising. For some people it's like, peeing without answering
yeah,
emails.
yeah.
So
Or without my kid coming in, for
ex-
my
ex-
age kids, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so the first question is, we have to define, what does balance even mean?
Yeah. And let me, if it's all right, let me share some thoughts on what I think
Please.
balance means, at least for me, and the way I like to think about it or teach it. Balance, because it's such a subjective word, we do have to get to some sort of understanding of what we mean by that. And I want you to think about how you even use that word when you're in conversation with someone. You likely say, I want to feel balance, right? As if balance is a feeling state. It's an
Mm,
internal state. Now we think about it sort of on the external. We're thinking about, well, if I have time for my workout and I have time for myself and I have time for my family, like, we actually think about it almost like it's a perfect schedule in some way. But what we really are talking about is we want to feel a different experience in our
mhm.
life, right? We want a different feeling experience. And
Yeah.
and I think that that's really important to understand, that what we're chasing when we start talking about something like balance is a feeling state, because it actually changes the way we go about creating it, right? We can't create a feeling state through a perfect schedule. It doesn't work that way. Our feelings come from, as we know, a connection between our mindset and the way we're thinking, and so there's an emotion connection between that, and we have to address what's going on inside of us if we're ever going to get to that state, that magical elusive state that we wish that we would be in.
Well, I think this is like, literally write that down if you're listening live. Because I think what I see is, if you want it to be a perfectly sliced pie with even, pieces for everything, um, the minute something shifts, like if you're not going for the internal state that you're talking about, you will allow some other giant thing, the
Yeah,
next loudest screaming piece, right?
always.
That needs you, will just fill that vacuum, or
Yep.
you'll say yes to something else that you feel like. I have a client who said her word of the year is no, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
That's so amazing. And when you said balance, I was thinking, Rebecca, of like, I just started doing yoga like 8 or 9 months ago, and so even when I have balance, I'm like, like it's shaky. One leg is more balanced than the other. My balance is like changing.
Mm.
I can look at everyone else in the room and judge my balance, right? And so I think that the only thing that's constant is, how do I feel about that experience? And
Mm.
so I just
Mhm.
wanted to highlight that even if,
Yeah.
unless you're like measuring two things on a scientific scale, I don't really think you're ever going to get balance.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And we might even use lots of other words to describe it: calm, centered, grounded, aligned. Those are a lot of the types of words I hear from people if we were to start if I were to ask you what's another word to describe that state that you're looking to achieve, right? Confident, um, yeah, controlled. All of those are kind of there's a synonymous nature to all of those, right? We are talking about, we would all kind of describe a very similar internal state that we're actually looking to achieve. And I think the most useful thing to believe is that we are always in control of that experience, right? You get to control that experience always. It's not your circumstances that ever create that for you.
I love that. I'll just take a deep breath in and listen to this wisdom. Okay, so we've got this word balance,
Yep.
and then we've got this word success.
Oh, that's exactly where I was going to go next.
Okay,
I love
and
it.
I
Oh,
feel
good.
like they're at war, you know, and there's a belief that we have, and I don't even like where is this coming from, but that you can't have success if you and have balance, or something has to
Mhm.
suffer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's like an either or.
yeah, and I've said like maybe you can't have it all at the same time, but I'm not an expert. So what do you think about success and output and achievement and holding it all together? And how do you define success?
That's actually the second part of the clarity process. I think that we live by a very invisible understanding of what success is, and when it's in our subconscious, inevitably what that means is we're going to adopt our culture's view of success, or we're going to adopt what was taught to us by our families. We're going to adopt what, the people around us, how we view they are in terms of success. We're going to adopt the way social media portrays success, right? And that may or may not be what is success to you, right? That
Ugh.
again, there's an element of subjectiveness to this. You just get to decide. And when we, I know not everybody that's listening is necessarily a mom, but when we enter into, seasons of life like being a parent, uh, all of a sudden success becomes multifaceted. It's not just
Right.
about success in our career. It's about feeling successful as a parent at the same time, right? And when one what it feels like is when one is sort of making progress and you're making strides in one area, it feels like you're failing in the other one, or vice versa, right? So you never really feel great in all areas of life because you feel like you've had to sacrifice one for the other, and you feel terrible. You feel like you're failing all of the time, right? And so there's a reframe around success that I think is really important, and it's an understanding that it's not singular. it's
Right.
it's
Okay.
multifaceted, and you have to sort of decide which facets, of what that looks like for you. For me, it has a lot to do with motherhood, and it has a lot to do with my career. And when both of those are crossing the finish line at the same time, then I'm going to feel the most successful. If I feel like I am sacrificing one for the other, then it's never going to feel good to me.
I'm so fascinated by this topic because I'm trying to remember when my kids were little. I mean, I was divorced. I had 3 daughters. Like, I was starting a business. It was a lot. Um, is it that are we communicating directly with our kids about our choices? Because we're also modeling, especially for
Yep.
our daughters, right? We're
Yeah.
modeling this. And I would say now the kids are so much freaking more sassy they were when my kids were younger, and they have all these words. That they could, like, my kids were never like, I'm triggered by you, but I know that now they say that. Um, so like, what's the process? How are we owning this without dumping our shit on our kids? Like, let's talk about that.
I mean, the story that's coming to mind actually is just one that happened the other day. So my kids are 8 and 11, so they're on the younger side. And I was at a soccer game watching my son play soccer. He's the younger one, the 8-year-old. And after the game, I mean, I sat there, I watched most of the game, but I also was on the phone with my mom because I hadn't chatted with her in a long time. And oh my gosh, I was going to get like 45 minutes without any kid interrupting me. And I could watch the game and talk to her on the phone. I felt like
Right.
I could, multitask that. And it just so happened that a friend was there, and so every once in a while I was interspersing chatting with her next to me. And so we got into the car, and it's like, hey bud, like, how was that game? He was like, oh my gosh, that goal, did you see when X, Y, or Z happened? And I was like, did I see that goal? Did I see that
Right.
goal?
I was
I
gonna say, I'm like,
no,
did you
I
miss a big play?
I didn't see the goal. And I had a moment where I had to decide, Was I going
Right?
to lie to him? He would never know. It'd be
Right.
very easy. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Wasn't it so cool? You looked great. Or was I just going to be honest and be like, missed that one, but I'm so sorry. And be honest about it, right? And in this case, I actually chose to be honest because it's more of my parenting style. And I think it really displays a couple of different important things. It depends on how you phrase this, right? And I think communication is really key with all of the key players in this, not just your kids, but your boss
Right.
or whomever you're communicating with. But in this case, it was like I watched most of that game. I saw a couple of your goals. Like I could describe some of those things to him and say at the same time, I haven't talked with Nana in a really long time. And so I chatted with her a bit too. And that did pull my focus, but it was so fun watching you play the parts of the game that I watched. And I feel great about that. Like
Right.
he still was like, can't believe you missed the goal, and I had no guilt about that whatsoever. It was like, you know what? I showed up and I was really present for the parts that I wanted to be present for. And I was really present with my mom in a few of those moments that I wanted to be present with her. And I get to choose that without feeling guilty. I think it's always about making sure you're being proactive and intentional with your decisions and feeling really good about your reasons. When you feel really good about your reasons, you don't leave room for guilt and resentment and regret and those kinds of things to creep in.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, well, here's the thing about parenting. Like, my kids are 30, 27, 23. So I'm in that phase
Yeah.
of parenting. But what I finally realized is that no matter what, we can never be perfect. And now that my kids are older, they're going to have shit.
Yeah.
They're just going to have
Yeah.
stuff. So if I can be like, there's no way I can be perfect. Like, I can put them in the middle of the room in an infant carrier and like look at them 24/7 until they were 18 and then they'd be messed up because they'd have too much attention, right?
Yeah.
But and so I think the thing I want to highlight what you said, which goes back to the beginning thing, is like, how are you defining success? So for
Yeah.
you in that moment, defining success was like, I watched most of the game. I also filled my bucket with connection with my mom. I chatted to a friend and I was there. And then also, like, I think the juicy part is the ride home.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, we don't even realize that there was likely a narrative for some people that said success here as a mom is watching every single moment of that game and be fully engaged and present through all of it. Right. That on some level, there's a lot of women that would think that that's the case. When I am home with my kids, I am supposed to give them everything that's a part of me. And I am supposed to sacrifice on some level every bit of my time when it is available to them. And I'm not here to say that that's right or wrong. I would say that's probably going to cause a lot of imbalance in your life. There's going to be some fallback to that, but you just get to decide if that's how you define success for you as a mom. And decide if you like that version of success or not. For me, success is defined a lot by conscious, aligned, value-based decision making. That's
Ooh,
really
I
it. If
love that.
I'm in a
Write that all down,
constant
y'all.
state of that,
Yeah, I was
value-based
sitting there
decisions.
thinking that when I was working, I would always be like, "Ugh, I feel so bad that I'm not the mom that brought the snacks, that organized the
Oh my
snack
gosh.
schedule, that, yada yada yada."
Yeah.
Um,
Is that how
for
you
me,
want to
when
define
I
the success? You say yes to every snack opportunity that comes, every field trip that comes, every time the school needs you, you can, but I have a feeling the sacrifice of that or the trade-off of doing that is probably not worth it to you. And it's not worth having that as a definition.
totally, and I love that okay, so I'm gonna just keep going back to this definition. I think that people aren't doing is defining and getting a clear picture of what that vision is
Yeah.
of what it looks like to be the good mom. Because I remember when I had my I'm not gonna be snack mom revelation, was like, okay,
Love that.
wait. So I only have so much time. I'm a single mom working 3 kids, right? And I was like, so I'm going to volunteer when and only I'm in the classroom or I am with my kid doing an activity. So I will do the field trip, right? But I'm not going to be like the head of the snack committee
Yep.
because I don't need to hang out with a bunch of live value parents.
Yep.
I don't want to hang out with them and miss work for that, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
I love
so
that.
that's a really really key piece.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you were to say like what's the one belief that keeps women stuck, burned out, like even when they love their work and they love their kids. It's like a hidden belief that everyone's like, if anyone knew this. What do you think is the root of that?
I I think the core belief that I have found so often to be like the crux of imbalance for women is I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
Some flavor of that. I'm not
Right.
good enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough. I should be doing more. It has something to do with enoughness. There is something about, and when I think about enoughness, I think about sufficiency. Like if you really think about that word, that's what we're talking about. It's like having it's hitting the mark, right? It is about living into a space where more isn't necessary. and
Right.
and that women don't hit that mark very easily, right? We use external benchmarks to try to define that sense of enoughness, validation from others, reviews from bosses, feedback, money earned, how well our
Mm.
kids are behaving. We use external factors to sort of define this for ourselves instead of, once again, coming to the place where you get to define what enough means to you and if you're good enough. And always I would encourage you to look at that idea of enoughness through the lens of you of your more through the lens of your humanity, of like who
Oh,
you were
beautiful.
created to be. Your human value is another way I like to say that, not through your accomplished value. You have both. You're valuable in both worlds, meaning like you have a resume that shows your accomplishments and your accolades and the value that you've put out into the world externally through your job, through your skill sets. That's your accomplished value. That is not the whole picture of your value as a human being, though. You have something else that you were literally born with, and it's called your human value. And we
Mm.
know that that exists because when your babies were born, if you have them, you looked at them and they changed your life. They brought so much joy, so much value. They added something into your life, but not because they had accomplished anything. They
Oh,
just were born and they did. And the same is true for you. You have human value. It is a big piece of the puzzle of what makes you who you are, and you are good no matter what.
oh
And
my
we
God. I love it. I have to tell this story. So my kids were like teenagers and we were on a trip to Colorado and we were in a car. I don't remember, somewhere on a road trippy kind of a thing. Anyway, and my kids were just being such assholes. And they were just being rude. And it was like you're in a car, like,
Yeah, you're
everyone's
trapped
always
and it's
their
like,
meanest
yeah,
when
yeah,
you're trapped.
yeah.
And I remember, Rebecca, I'll never forget, I turned around the back seat and I was like, I am a human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
To this day, they're like, guys, remember, mom's a human
Mom's a
being,
human being.
right? But that's it, right? Yes, I'm your mom. Yes, I work for you,
Yeah.
but F you. Like,
Yeah.
I am a human
Yeah.
being.
Yeah.
And I'm having my own experience. And I
Yeah.
think people forget that. So we have to own it. So all
Yeah.
of you, put in the chat, I am a human being.
I am a human being. I am good enough. I am doing
Yes.
enough. I am enough. I called it the enough triad because it's three just core beliefs that have to be, if like when they are sort of ingrained in you, they will bring an immense amount of opportunity for balance in your life, because it ends the proving. It leaves you believing in your like sufficiency and your value and your goodness and your innate value that you bring into this world. It's everything, for sure.
Okay, so now if I'm a human being, let's talk about boundaries because
Yep.
apparently, we're not supposed to have any.
Or
um,
or
this
we just
is
have a very convoluted view of boundaries. That's what I would probably say.
I think this topic right now is like even harder than when I was a working
Mm,
mom, because I just feel like I don't even know. I have so many friends in their 40s that have kids, like between 10 and 17, and it's just
yeah.
mental out there with the boundaries. Um, and I feel like I hear women like afraid to set boundaries
Mhm.
at home now. I mean, at home and at work,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, it's not worth it. There's going to be arguments. If I set a boundary at work, then, they won't think I'm enough, or I'll, someone
Yeah.
else will replace me. Um, so let's talk about boundaries, like rigid boundaries, boundaries that create freedom.
Mm.
How do you help clients set
Yeah.
boundaries internally? Like, let's talk about that, because I think it's just a shit show out there.
Yeah, at first we have to get on the same page around what we're talking about when we're talking about boundaries. That's really important, because even you hinted at it even in the way you started to talk about it, and it's how a lot of us do talk about it. They don't respect my boundaries. That's how we often will talk about it. I've asked them to not message me after hours, right? As if that's a boundary on some level. Boundaries have nothing to do with other human beings. You would never get to control another human beings and their response and what they do. They're allowed to message you at all hours. That has nothing to do with the boundary. A boundary is what you do and what you protect, no matter what somebody else does, right?
Oh
So
my
I
God,
like
I love this. Say it
it.
again. It's so good.
A boundary is something that you do or what you protect, no matter what somebody else does.
Amen.
Okay.
Okay.
Amen. Exactly. So what that means is a true boundary would be saying, you're allowed to message me whenever you want. Here's what I'm going to do when you do that. I'm going to tell you I'm not available. I am going to turn off my email so I don't even get that freaking message. I'm going to, if it's urgent, I'm going to tell you that I am available at 8 o'clock after I put my kids to sleep, or whenever. You decide what you want to do and you let them be them, right? The problem that gets in the way is that we start to then have an internal narrative about what that's going to mean.
Right.
And so, what are the implications of doing that? If I'm not available, if I push back, if I say I can't hop on right now and do that, if I don't get back, instantaneously, back to them or something like that, they're going to think I'm not a team player. I'm not committed to this job. I'm not good enough. I'm going to feel like I'm failing them. I'm, fill in the blank, right? And so we have then these narratives about what those boundaries mean. That's actually the hardest part about boundaries, is what the narratives that follow when we start to actually put them in place. And so what I like to tell people is that the only thing that ever gets in the way of us holding to our boundaries is a really big icky feeling. That's really it. It is a big icky feeling of potentially being looked down upon, or failing, or feeling like not a team player, or disappointing someone, or feeling inadequate in some way, or behind, or overwhelmed.
Or making
When we
someone else feel bad.
which isn't
Right,
which
which
is
is like they're uncomfortable or mad, like, oh, they're gonna. I thought they'll. I don't want to make them feel bad.
I don't want to make them feel bad, but really it's not really about that. It's actually how you're going to feel if they felt bad.
Yes, 100%.
If you made them feel bad, what are you going to think about you? You're going to think you're a terrible person and that you're horrible and you're no good, and you're going to feel awful about yourself. That's really where the crux of it is. It has nothing to do with them feeling bad. It has to do with what's going to happen inside of you if they were to go down that path and feel that way. Right? They're allowed to feel whatever they want to feel. We're allowed to feel whatever we want to feel. It's okay, right? That's a piece of the boundary holding. So emotional processing and emotional regulation is really what it takes to hold to boundaries. It is learning how to move through those feelings that will surface. There's literally nothing you could do to prevent your body from feeling those feelings at first, at least. They are just going to happen, and it's your job to learn how to regulate yourself through those moments and follow through with your boundary even though you're feeling that way.
So I'm on this volunteer thing, and I just keep getting asked to do stuff, and that wasn't part of my original deal. And so this is my year of living with the discomfort from people hearing no.
Mm.
And oh my God, Rebecca, I'm like, it feels like literal knives in my chest. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't do that. I'm not available for that. And then I see someone else stepping in. I'm like, oh, I'm a bad person, and
Right.
it's just it's like me this was my journey this year. I'm like focused on it, right? Is like
Yeah.
really living with that knife in my chest feeling and understanding that that is what is right for me. And
Yeah.
it's okay. And yeah,
Yeah.
they might. And here's the other thing that you said. And in the end, kind of, so what if they say she's a bad volunteer? Because literally, like, I came to do a certain thing only.
Volunteer. Right. Maybe that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things for you. You sort of get to decide on some level. And usually when I ask people this, I'm like, well, what would you think if you heard a no? So let's just say somebody else on that committee said, I'm overcommitted on these other things. I can't say yes to this because I really want to double down on the one thing I said I was going to do. So I'm going to say no. So if you heard their whole backstory, like in your head, right? And they actually said those words to you, are you really going to think they're a bad volunteer?
No, not
No,
at
you're
all.
gonna
I'd
think
be
they're a
like,
badass woman that knows what they want and knows what their priorities are. It's like more power to you. That's how we actually think. It's so rare that we would ever find somebody that would actually believe and say anything that we think that they might say. Ever. We would never say it about other people. People don't say it about us, right? It's made up in our minds, right? These are literal narratives that are based in our insecurity, right? They're fear-based thinking. They're a part of they're ingrained in our nervous system, right? And I promise, Marnie, it's going to get easier for you the more you practice.
I'm going to
feeling
be
that
so
feeling.
strong in
The
my
knives,
nose.
you have 100 knives right now, and eventually it's going to be 50, and then it's going to be 20, and eventually it might just be one. I promise that feeling is going to lessen over time. It won't feel as bad as it does right now, come middle of the year or whenever. But you can also get ahead of some of that too by spending, if that's like a common moment where, and I tell my clients to recognize these, like literally these moments happen almost cyclically in our life, right? These moments where we are forced to like come butt up against our boundaries and our priorities.
Right.
And so if that's a regular moment where you feel the knives in your heart and you feel so bad about it, I would spend some time thinking like reverse narrative on that. Like, how is that story not really true? I mean, we just debunked it on some level, right? But it's like, how is that story not really true? Why is, what's really going on in this moment that's making me feel bad? What is that? Do I really believe that? Would I believe that for someone else? Like, really spending some time pulling apart that narrative and questioning it, because it really is just that. It's just a narrative. Like, you just get to decide if that's the story you want to tell yourself or not. And that's going to help too, right? So there's like some things we can do preventatively to get ahead of some of the big feelings and the narratives that kind of surface. And then of course, learning to regulate yourself in that moment and say no anyway is also a big piece of it as well.
Ugh, I love. Okay, last thing. You created the daily kickstart as a simple morning practice, which I am like 100% fan of because I'm doing all this reflecting that you're talking about. What problem were you seeing that made you realize women needed something like that? And by the way, we're going to put the link to get your daily kickstart in the comments. So you can grab it. And then also we'll have it on our description and everything else. So you guys can make sure you can get this for free. But why did you create it?
So coming back to what I was just talking about, which was like preventative, right? So our narratives, our mindsets, our thoughts, right? Research shows that we think 95% of the same thoughts that we thought yesterday, right? And we also know that our thoughts are skewed to the negative, right? So we have a negative bias. It's inherent in us as human beings and so forth. So that means that if you told yourself today, I'm not good enough, when you got to the end of the workday and you didn't get everything done that you wanted to get done today, and that was your narrative, likely, unless you do anything about it, it's going to be the same narrative tomorrow because you think 95% of the same thoughts. So we think in this very habitual way. And so getting ahead of some of those thoughts and starting to cultivate a new way of thinking that's very intentional to set ourselves up for the day in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves, that's aligned with success, that's aligned with enough, right? Like that is going to really help to get in front of a lot of these kind of boundary breaking moments that happen throughout the day, right? And make you ultimately feel better about yourself. So that's really where this kickstart comes from. It's a very simple practice of deciding, what do you want to think about yourself today? Why do you want to think that about yourself today? When are you going to forget about that today? Like what's the meeting that you're going to have, the person you're going to interact with, the cyclical moment that tends to happen where you forget that you're good enough? What's that moment today? And what are you going to do in that moment? Right. So very simple kind of walks you through very systematically a way of cultivating a very intentional mindset that you can then hold on to throughout the day, because at least then you thought it once. And if you thought it once today and then you do it again tomorrow, same thought, you're going to start building a new habit of thinking that's going to be way more supportive to you. So it's just a 10-minute practice. It is going to get ahead of so much of the negative thinking, particularly for women, that we tend to heap upon ourselves throughout the day.
Oh, and it's to me that's been a game changer. Like the morning, having the extra time to really focus and set my
yeah.
intention and my mindset, like super, super huge. So we have a ton of places you can get more from Rebecca. We're going to throw that in the chat, also obviously in our description, our show notes. But if you are on Instagram, you could just look up Rebecca Olson Coach right now. For those of you that are here, she's on LinkedIn, she's on Facebook, she's on YouTube. Rebecca Olson Coaching, and
Check out
also
the
again,
podcast.
we got a podcast. I
Yep.
mean,
all over the place.
so many. So I'd love for you to get that daily kickstart and start doing that, because here's my thing with this show is blah, blah, blah. Information without action is entertainment. And while we hope we entertain the shit out of you, we also hope that you take some action.
Get something from
you
this.
know,
Yeah.
give yourself permission to release one belief today.
Mm.
Define success for yourself as a mom, as an employee, as a boss. Give yourself permission to define balance for
Yeah.
you.
To believe that you're good enough.
Yeah. And what would it look like from the inside out? Like, how would you feel? And just notice where you're carrying some pressure that doesn't belong to you, that it's outdated. Rebecca, thank you. I could talk to you for hours and hours. This has been so helpful for me, and I know for so many women who are listening.
Thank you so much, Marnie, for having me. It's such a delight.
Ladies, remember, always, in all ways, it is your responsibility to life check yourself. We'll see you next week with another guest, another show, and then I'll be doing lives all week. Of course, you can follow me on Substack. We're going to put a link in the Substack so you can follow me also on Instagram and YouTube. But for now, screw the should life. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.